Don't touch him. The warning came so quietly that it barely sounded like a command, yet every servant in the room obeyed instantly. No one stepped closer to the massive bed. No one looked directly at the man lying on it. Chairman Hyun-woo Seo had ruled Korea's largest criminal syndicate for nearly 25 years. Politicians feared him. Rival gangs disappeared because of him. Even powerful businessmen lowered their voices when his name entered a conversation. Now he lay alone. His breathing was uneven. Sweat soaked the collar of his nightshirt. Every few seconds his body shook with violent chills. The private doctor packed his equipment. "I've done everything I can." One of Hyun-woo's senior lieutenants folded his arms. "So, that's it?" The doctor refused to meet anyone's eyes. "The infection has spread too far. If he survives the night, it will be a miracle." Silence settled over the enormous bedroom. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that came when people were already thinking about who would inherit power. Who would betray whom? Who would die next? Without another word, the doctor hurried out. One by one, everyone else followed. The bodyguards. The housekeepers. The cooks. Even the men who had sworn lifelong loyalty. Within minutes, Korea's most feared mafia boss had been abandoned inside his own mansion. Except one person hadn't received the message. 4-year-old Malik Brooks had wandered away while playing with his toy bus in one of the endless hallways. His mother had warned him not to explore. But curiosity usually won. He pushed open the enormous bedroom door with both tiny hands. Inside he found an old man breathing funny. Malik tilted his head. "Mister." No answer. He walked closer. His little sneakers made soft tapping sounds across the polished wooden floor. The man's forehead looked shiny. His lips were dry. Malik remembered something. Just 2 months earlier he'd gotten sick with a terrible fever. His mother had stayed awake all night beside him. She kept placing cool towels on his forehead. She sang quietly until he fell asleep. She never left. Malik looked around the room. Nobody else was there. His small face frowned. "My mommy says sick people shouldn't be by themselves." He climbed onto a chair beside the bed. The chair was too heavy. He nearly tipped it over trying. Finally he managed. He reached the wash basin. The towel was almost bigger than his arms. He soaked it in cool water, squeezed it the best he could, then carefully laid it across the old man's burning forehead. "There." His tiny voice carried surprising confidence. "Now you won't be so hot." For the first time in nearly 12 hours, Hyun-woo Seo's breathing slowed. His face relaxed. Outside the bedroom nobody noticed. Everyone was too busy whispering about succession. "Before we go any further, I'm curious. Where are you watching or listening from today? Drop your country or city in the comments. It's always amazing seeing how these stories bring people together from all over the world." Earlier that morning, Nia Brooks had stood outside the enormous iron gates wondering whether she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. 6 months ago she had lived in Atlanta. Today she was in South Korea. Life could change that quickly. After her husband died in a construction accident 3 years earlier, every plan she'd made collapsed. Hospital bills. Debt. Endless overtime. Eventually an international housekeeping agency offered something impossible to ignore. Live-in employment. Excellent pay. Housing included. She accepted without asking many questions. Only after arriving did another employee whisper the truth. "Do you know whose house this is?" Nia shook her head. The woman looked around before answering. "Chairman Seo." The name meant nothing to Nia. Until another worker quietly added, "The newspapers don't call him a businessman. They call him the ghost chairman." Only then did she understand. She had accepted a job inside the mansion of Korea's most feared crime boss. Leaving wasn't an option. She had already spent every dollar she owned getting here. Malik needed food. Needed school. Needed stability. So she stayed. She kept her head down. Worked harder than anyone else. Never asked questions. Never wandered where she wasn't supposed to. Until today. A loud crash echoed through the hallway. Nia spun around. Malik. No answer. Her heart immediately raced. She dropped the basket of folded towels and began searching every corridor. Malik. Still nothing. She searched the kitchens. The library. The gardens. Nothing. Finally she reached the chairman's private wing. 2 armed guards stood outside. One frowned. "Nobody enters." "My son is missing." "No one enters." Tears filled her eyes. "Please, he's only 4. One guard sighed. "If he went inside." He didn't finish. He simply opened the bedroom door. Nia rushed in. Then stopped. Malik sat beside the old man's bed. One tiny hand held the damp towel in place. The other gently patted Hyun-woo's shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "My mommy says fevers always go away." Nia's face turned pale. "Malik." She ran forward. "I'm so sorry." She grabbed her son. "I'm sorry." He didn't know. Before she could leave, a weak voice filled the room. "Leave him." Everyone froze. Hyun-woo's eyes slowly opened. Clouded. Weak. But awake. His gaze settled on the little boy. "You stayed." Malik nodded. "You were lonely." The old crime boss stared at him for several seconds. No fear. No expectation. Just simple honesty. Something he hadn't seen directed toward him in decades. His cracked lips formed the faintest smile. It hurt. But it was real. "Thank you." Those two words stunned every guard outside the room. Because no one could remember the last time Hyun-woo Seo had thanked anyone. Yet someone else heard those words too. Hidden behind the partially open door, Vice Chairman Jae-min Han watched silently. His expression never changed. But inside, his carefully planned future had just become far more complicated. Vice Chairman Jae-min Han closed the bedroom door without making a sound. He walked down the hallway with measured steps, but his thoughts were racing. The doctors had promised Hyun-woo would never recover. The fever was supposed to finish what years of violence had started. By sunrise the chairman would be dead. By the end of the week, Jae-min would become the new head of the Seo syndicate. That had been the plan. Now a 4-year-old boy had ruined it. Hyun-woo slept for nearly 11 hours. When he finally opened his eyes again, the crushing pain in his chest had eased. The fever had not disappeared, but it had broken enough for him to think clearly. The first thing he noticed was the little blue towel folded neatly beside his pillow. He picked it up. It smelled faintly of soap. His mind drifted back to the boy's tiny hands carefully placing it across his forehead. No one had touched him with kindness in years. People touched him because they feared him. Doctors touched him because they were paid. Bodyguards touched him to protect him. But that little boy, he had simply cared. Hyun-woo slowly closed his eyes. For the first time in decades, guilt settled heavier than pain. What kind of life had he built if a stranger's child showed him more compassion than the empire he had spent his life creating? Later that afternoon, Nia was scrubbing the marble staircase when the head butler approached. "Chairman Seo wishes to see you." Every worker nearby stopped moving. One maid quietly whispered a prayer. No servant was ever summoned personally. Nia's stomach tightened. She wondered if she and Malik were about to be thrown out. Or worse. She wiped her hands, straightened her uniform, and followed the butler through the mansion. When she entered the chairman's study, Hyun-woo was seated near the window, wrapped in a gray blanket. He looked much older than before. Not weaker. Just tired. He gestured toward a chair. "You may sit." Nia remained standing. "I'd rather stand, sir." A faint smile crossed his face. "You don't trust me," she answered honestly. "I don't know you." That may be the wisest answer I've heard in years. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Hyun-woo asked quietly, "Why did your son stay?" She blinked. "I'm sorry?" He wasn't afraid. Nia looked toward the floor. "Malik doesn't understand power. He understands people." She smiled softly. "When someone looks sick he thinks they need help. That's all." Hyun-woo stared at the garden outside. So simple. So impossible. He took a slow breath. "I've spent my entire life making sure people feared me." He looked back at her. "I never considered what it would cost." Nia chose her next words carefully. "My grandmother used to say that fear can build a kingdom." She paused. "But only love can keep people inside it willingly." The room became silent again. Those words struck somewhere deep inside him. Somewhere he had buried decades ago. That evening, Malik was playing with wooden blocks in the servants' quarters when someone knocked gently. The head butler stood outside. "The chairman requests your company." Malik grinned. "The sick grandpa?" The butler couldn't help smiling. "Yes." Malik hurried down the hallway holding his favorite toy bus. When he entered the room, Hyun-woo looked stronger than the day before. "You came back." Malik nodded. "I brought my bus." Hyun-woo raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "So you won't be bored." The old man chuckled. It surprised even himself. Malik climbed onto the same chair as before. "You still look tired." "I am. My mommy says tired people need soup." "I imagine she's right." "And naps." Hyun-woo laughed again. This time louder. Outside the room, two guards exchanged confused glances. Neither had ever heard their chairman laugh. Days passed. The mansion slowly noticed something impossible. Hyun-woo was recovering. Every afternoon Malik visited for exactly 30 minutes. Sometimes they played simple games. Sometimes they drew pictures. Sometimes the boy simply talked while the old man listened. He told stories about birds he'd seen outside. About cartoons. About how he wanted to become a firefighter because firefighters help people. One afternoon Malik held up a drawing. "This is you." Hyun-woo examined it. The picture showed an old man holding hands with a little boy beneath a giant tree. "You made me taller than the tree." Malik nodded proudly. "Heroes are tall." The chairman stared at the drawing for a long time. No one had ever called him a hero. Not even by mistake. His eyes quietly drifted toward the blue towel still folded on his bedside table. The towel. The drawing. Neither had any value. Yet they had become the two most precious things he owned. But not everyone welcomed the chairman's recovery. Late one night, Jae-min Han entered a hidden room beneath the estate. 5 men were already waiting. One placed a black folder on the table. "Our contacts inside the police are asking questions." Another leaned forward. "If Seo survives much longer, everything changes." Jae-min remained calm. "He won't survive." One of the men frowned. "The poison failed. It slowed him. It bought us time." Jae-min opened the folder. Inside were financial records, shipping routes, and lists of loyal captains. "Prepare phase 2. A younger man hesitated. "What about the child?" Silence filled the room. Jae-min finally answered. "If the boy continues influencing Chairman Seo." He slowly closed the folder. "Then the boy becomes part of the problem." Those words hung in the air like ice. For the first time, innocent kindness had wandered into a world where innocence rarely survived. And somewhere above them, completely unaware of the danger closing in, Malik was asleep with his toy bus tucked beneath his arm. The attack came just before sunrise. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was almost invisible. The head chef carried a silver tray toward Chairman Seo's private dining room, just as he had every morning for 12 years. Halfway down the corridor, a housemaid accidentally bumped into him. The tray tilted. The tea spilled. "I'm so sorry," the maid cried. "It's fine," the chef muttered. "I'll make another." Neither of them noticed a gloved hand quietly replacing the medicine bottle on the tray before it returned to the kitchen. At exactly 7:15 a.m., Hyun-woo sat down for breakfast. He reached for the medicine. Before he could swallow it, Malik burst into the room carrying a paper airplane. "Grandpa." Hyun-woo looked up, smiling. "I made this for you." The little boy launched the airplane. It glided across the room and struck the medicine bottle. The bottle rolled off the table. It shattered against the floor. A sharp chemical smell filled the room. The family doctor frowned. "That's not your medicine." He knelt and dipped a testing strip into the liquid. Within seconds the strip turned black. His face lost all color. Poison. Every guard in the room reached for their weapons. Hyun-woo slowly turned toward the broken bottle. If Malik hadn't thrown that paper airplane, he would already be dead. The mansion was sealed within minutes. No one entered. No one left. Every servant, guard, and employee gathered in the main hall. Hyun-woo stood before them. He looked weaker than usual, but his voice carried through the room. "Someone inside this house wants me dead." No one spoke. He continued. "They have already failed twice." A ripple of fear spread through the servants. Nia instinctively pulled Malik closer. She had accepted a housekeeping job. Now she and her son were standing inside the center of a mafia power struggle. Hyun-woo noticed her fear. He looked directly at his security chief. "From this moment forward, Nia Brooks and her son are under my personal protection." Gasps echoed through the hall. Personal protection from Chairman Seo meant something very specific. Anyone who harmed them would become his enemy. And in Korea there were very few worse enemies to have. Later that afternoon, Hyun-woo summoned his oldest advisor. An elderly man named Min-jae Lim entered quietly. Unlike the others, Min-jae had served Hyun-woo long before the syndicate became powerful. He had seen every victory, every mistake, every funeral. Hyun-woo placed the broken medicine bottle on the desk. "Tell me the truth." Min-jae looked at it for a long time. Then he sighed. "I warned you this day would come." "I know." "You built an empire that rewards ambition." "I know." "You taught ambitious men that power belongs to whoever can take it." Hyun-woo closed his eyes. "I know." Min-jae's voice softened. "But I never expected they would come for you while you were lying in bed." Hyun-woo opened his eyes again. "Neither did I." After a long silence, Min-jae asked a question no one else dared ask. What are you going to do? The chairman looked toward the window. Beyond the gardens, Malik was chasing butterflies while Nia watched from a bench. For the first time in years, the sight made him feel peaceful. I spent 30 years teaching men how to kill. He spoke almost to himself. A 4-year-old taught me how to live. That evening, Hyun-woo made a decision that shocked his inner circle. He called a meeting of every regional boss in the syndicate. More than 30 men gathered around a long wooden table. Some had followed him for decades. Others secretly hoped to replace him. Hyun-woo remained standing. I have an announcement. The room became silent. I am ending all narcotics operations. Confused murmurs erupted instantly. One captain stood. Chairman, half our revenue. I know. Another interrupted. Our rivals will think we're weak. I know. A third slammed his fist onto the table. This isn't business. This is surrender. Hyun-woo's gaze hardened. No. This is the first decision I've made in 30 years that lets me sleep at night. The room fell silent again. Only one person showed no surprise. Vice Chairman Jae-min Han. Because now he understood. The old Hyun-woo Seo was gone. The man sitting at the head of the table would dismantle everything Jae-min had spent years preparing to inherit. Which meant there was only one option left. The chairman could not be allowed to live. Late that night, Jae-min entered the underground chamber once more. His closest allies waited. The reforms have begun, one of them reported. If this continues, we'll lose everything. Jae-min nodded calmly. Then we move tonight. And the woman? Untouchable. The child? Jae-min's jaw tightened. He remembered watching Malik beside the chairman's bed. One innocent act had undone years of careful planning. The child stays alive. The others looked confused. Why? Because his death would unite everyone behind Chairman Seo. He paused. But his mother? His voice became cold. Is another matter. At that very moment, upstairs, Nia was helping Malik into bed. He hugged his toy bus. Mom? Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Grandpa smiles more now? She smiled gently. I think he does. Malik closed his eyes. I'm glad. Nia kissed his forehead. So am I. Neither of them knew that armed men were already moving through the darkness outside the servants' quarters. The conspiracy had stopped targeting the chairman. Now it was coming for the family that had changed him. Nia woke to the sound of breaking glass. Not loud. Just enough to make every instinct she had screamed that something was wrong. She sat upright. The bedside clock read 2:18 a.m. Her room was almost completely dark. Beside her, Malik slept peacefully, hugging his toy bus against his chest. Then she heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. Coming from the hallway. Someone was trying not to be heard. Nia slid out of bed without making a sound. She wrapped one arm around Malik and gently shook his shoulder. Sweetheart. His eyes fluttered open. Mom? I need you to stay very quiet. He immediately nodded. She had never used that voice before. A shadow appeared beneath the door. Then another. The handle began to turn. Lock. A whisper came from outside. She's in there. Nia's heart seemed to stop. They weren't thieves. They knew exactly who they were looking for. Across the mansion, Chairman Hyun-woo had not gone to sleep. Years in the underworld had taught him something simple. When enemies failed twice, they never waited long for a third attempt. He sat in his study staring at Malik's drawing. The old man beneath the giant tree. The little boy holding his hand. A hero. He had spent decades believing power came from making people fear him. Now he realized real strength was having someone who wanted you alive because they loved you. Not because they needed you. Suddenly the emergency alarm flashed red. His security monitor lit up. Servants' quarters. Unauthorized movement. Hyun-woo was already on his feet. The first kick splintered Nia's door. The second tore it from its hinges. 3 masked men rushed inside. Take the woman. One grabbed Nia's arm. Before he could drag her away, something heavy crashed into his shoulder. A wooden chair. Nia had swung with every ounce of strength she possessed. The man stumbled backward. Run, Malik. The little boy didn't hesitate. Barefoot, clutching his toy bus, he sprinted into the hallway. Grandpa. His tiny voice echoed through the mansion. Grandpa. One attacker turned toward the child. No. Nia threw herself between them. The knife meant for Malik slashed across her forearm. Pain exploded through her arm, but she never let go of the attacker's wrist. If you want my son. She gritted her teeth. You go through me. Hyun-woo heard Malik before he saw him. Grandpa. The old chairman stepped into the corridor just as the frightened little boy collided with him. Malik wrapped both arms around his legs. They're hurting, Mommy. Time seemed to freeze. For years men had begged Hyun-woo to save them. He rarely had. Now one terrified child looked up at him with complete trust. Without fear. Without doubt. Just trust. Something inside the old crime boss hardened. Not into cruelty. Into resolve. He rested one hand on Malik's shoulder. Stay behind me. It was the first promise he'd made in years that truly mattered. The attackers dragged Nia toward the hallway. Then they stopped. Hyun-woo stood waiting. He wore no suit. No symbol of power. Just a plain gray robe. But every man in that hallway knew exactly who he was. One attacker whispered, "Finish him." Nobody moved. Because even weakened by illness, Hyun-woo Seo's presence carried decades of earned fear. He looked at the men quietly. You came into my home. No one answered. You threatened my family. Still silence. Then Hyun-woo spoke one final sentence. You should have chosen only one of those mistakes. The hallway erupted. Guards flooded both ends. Within seconds the attackers were surrounded. One tried to fire his weapon. A guard tackled him to the floor. Another attempted to escape through a side corridor. He was intercepted before taking 3 steps. The fight ended almost as quickly as it began. Not because Hyun-woo was ruthless. Because loyalty had returned. His guards weren't protecting a feared king anymore. They were protecting the man who had finally remembered what honor looked like. Nia collapsed against the wall, pressing her injured arm. Hyun-woo crossed the hallway and knelt beside her. You've been hurt. She looked at him, breathing hard. My son. Hyun-woo glanced behind him. Malik stood safely between 2 guards, still clutching his toy bus. He's safe. Only then did Nia allow herself to cry. Not from pain. From relief. Malik broke free from the guards and ran straight to her. Mommy? He hugged her carefully, trying not to touch the bleeding arm. Then he looked up at Hyun-woo. You kept your promise. The chairman swallowed hard. I did. Malik smiled. I knew you would. Those simple words struck deeper than any bullet ever had. For the first time in decades, Hyun-woo realized someone believed in him without expecting anything in return. An hour later, one of the captured attackers finally spoke. I'll tell you everything. The interrogation room fell silent. Vice Chairman Han ordered it. Every eye turned toward Jaemin's empty seat at the council table. The attacker continued. He poisoned your medicine. He paid the doctors to lie. He planned to take over the syndicate after your funeral. Hyun-woo closed his eyes. The betrayal hurt. Not because it was unexpected. Because Jaemin had once been like a son to him. He had taught him. Protected him. Trusted him. And somewhere along the way, ambition had replaced loyalty. Min-jae quietly placed a folder on the table. We searched Vice Chairman Han's office. Inside were signed bank transfers. Secret communications. Assassination orders. Every piece of the conspiracy. Hyun-woo looked around the room. There will be no revenge killings. Several captains looked stunned. No executions. More silence. We hand every piece of evidence to the national authorities. One captain protested. They'll imprison us too. Hyun-woo nodded. They should. The room became perfectly still. No one had expected this. The ghost chairman wasn't trying to save his empire. He was ending it. And for the first time in 30 years, the king of Korea's most feared criminal organization chose justice over power. The sun had barely risen when dozens of black vehicles rolled through the mansion gates. Not members of the syndicate. Law enforcement. Financial investigators. Prosecutors. For years they had tried to build a case against the ghost chairman. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence vanished. Every investigation reached a dead end. This time Hyun-woo Seo met them at the front door. His hands were empty. I've been expecting you. The lead prosecutor looked almost suspicious. You understand why we're here? Hyun-woo nodded. I do. He handed over a thick folder. Inside were ledgers, encrypted accounts, names of corrupt officials, shipping routes, and decades of evidence that could dismantle one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. The prosecutor stared at him. Why now? Hyun-woo glanced toward the garden. Malik was chasing butterflies while Nia sat on a bench with her arm in a sling. Because a little boy reminded me that the man I became wasn't the man I had to die as. Vice Chairman Jaemin Han never made it out of the city. By noon, he had been arrested while attempting to flee with forged documents and millions in hidden cash. When investigators questioned him, he didn't deny the conspiracy. He simply lowered his head. I thought power was worth anything. His voice cracked for the first time. I was wrong. His empire had existed only because Hyun-woo built it. The moment Hyun-woo chose truth over fear, it collapsed. The legal process lasted 11 months. Hyun-woo accepted responsibility for the crimes he had ordered and the lives his organization had destroyed. He cooperated fully with investigators, testified against corrupt officials, and surrendered every hidden asset connected to the syndicate. Many people could not forgive him. Some never would. He never asked them to. Redemption, he learned, was not the same as erasing the past. It was choosing to face it. 1 year later, spring returned to the valley where the mansion once stood. The estate no longer belonged to a crime family. Most of it had been converted into a children's rehabilitation and education center funded by the legal sale of Hyun-woo's remaining personal assets. Laughter had replaced whispered threats. Classrooms stood where secret meetings once took place. The underground chamber that had housed conspiracies was now a library. Nia had accepted a position managing the center's family outreach program. She smiled more often now. Not because life had become easy, because it had finally become honest. Every afternoon she and Malik shared lunch beneath the old oak tree in the courtyard. Usually homemade kimbap, sliced fruit and warm soup. It had become their little ritual. One afternoon Malik looked toward the entrance. Mom? She followed his eyes. An older man walked slowly through the gate carrying a small paper bag. Hyun-woo. His health was still fragile. His hair had turned almost completely white. But there was peace in his face that had never existed before. He smiled as Malik ran toward him. I brought something. What is it? Hyun-woo opened the bag. Inside was a brand new toy bus. Malik laughed. But I still have my old one. I know. Hyun-woo smiled gently. Some things are worth keeping. Others are worth beginning again. Malik took the new bus, then reached into his pocket. I have something for you too. He unfolded a piece of paper. Another drawing. This time there were 3 people beneath the giant tree. A little boy. His mother. An old man. Above them, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Family isn't who finds you first. It's who stays." Hyun-woo felt his throat tighten. He carefully folded the drawing and placed it inside his jacket beside the first one Malik had given him. The first drawing had saved his heart. The second reminded him why. As the afternoon sun settled across the courtyard, Malik slipped his small hand into Hyun-woo's. The old chairman looked down. You know, Malik said with a grin, you're smiling again. Hyun-woo chuckled. I suppose I am. Years earlier, an entire mansion had abandoned a dying crime lord because they believed fear was stronger than love. They were wrong. In the end, the most feared man in Korea wasn't saved by money. He wasn't saved by power. He wasn't saved by the empire he spent a lifetime building. He was saved by a 4-year-old boy carrying a damp towel, a paper airplane, and a heart too innocent to understand that some people believed monsters couldn't change. The boy never saw a monster. He only saw someone who was sick and alone. And sometimes that is enough to change a life. Sometimes it is enough to change the world. What did this story teach you about redemption, forgiveness, and the power of simple kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories that remind us that hope can appear in the most unexpected places.